now it's my very great pleasure to invite Dr Leonora Risse to the main event, who will tell us all about the Gender Equality Evidence Hub. You can see it and she will show us through it. I'm sure you all know Leonora, but I'm going to say that she's the creator of the Gender Equality Evidence Hub, the Associate Professor at the University of Canberra and a Fellow of the Women's Leadership Institute of Australia, and my friend. So come on up, Leonora.
Well, thank you so much for the support and the real positive energy and enthusiasm that we feel. I feel like the suspense, the expectation is very high, and I really hope I can deliver on that. But I know this is a community of real goodwill and good spirit. So we'll share. I'm delighted to be sharing it with you. Professor Mac did say we're not going to have a live demo, but we're going to have something very, very, very close, and that's our risk mitigation strategy, isn't it? That's okay. So I think we've been fortunate to hear from supporters and speakers earlier who've really shared already the foundational essence of the hub. I'm looking out, seeing so many familiar faces and friends, so thank you for being here. And it's a pleasure to kind of share with you the practical side. What is it going to look like when you sign in and have a look at it? And this is about a community, so I just would like to reiterate how grateful I am to all of the people who have supported this. And someone who's not on the screen who isn't speaking is Professor Anne-Laure Monchion, who is the Director of the Global Business Innovation Hub at RMIT, who's also been a key part behind this. So this is really about building a community, building a connection between all of the various parts of this ecosystem. Thank you, Stacey, for the acknowledgement of country earlier, and I'd like to add my acknowledgement of country and recognition of the traditional custodians of the lands on which we're gathered here today. I would actually like to start with this as a reminder that we're here to talk about connection and community and foundations. And before I show you the screen of what the hub looks like, I'll just take a moment to think about the foundation, the roots, the origin, the anchor point for what this hub is about. I'm a very visual person as well, so it's mainly going to be pictures. Any of my students who sit in on my lectures, you know I'm all visual and I'm all hands and moving, so hopefully this clicker doesn't go flying. The starting point is a stack of books, right? So we have some amazing researchers in Australia and internationally working on gender equality, and many of you are here today, and thank you for coming along, or you're watching online. We don't have a shortage of researchers who are energetic and passionate and talented and have the technical expertise combined with the dedication. They're producing amazing research. Our knowledge is growing as to what are the causes and the consequences of gender equality, and increasingly it's growing as to what works to cleanse these gender biases and inequities in our culture. But we've got this big stack of books over here, right? So notice we're talking about a big landscape. We also have data. The data's building, as some of the previous speakers have said, that data, Kay talked about this, the data and the evidence and the metrics are building, and they're part of our armour. But these books and this data sits over here, and all the practitioners are kind of in another space. So we have well-intentioned and passionate, committed people in government policy making, in consultancy, in the private sector, in civil society groups, in communities, seeking this data and wanting to know, is what I'm doing actually backed up by the evidence? Is it going to be effective? How can we connect those two worlds? And that's effectively what this hub is about. It's about activating all those nodes between these two worlds, lighting them up and connecting it, because we all share this same mission. And it's about scaling it and synergizing. We know that there are these connections out there, but how do we level it up to a scale that makes it more efficient and synergizes those efforts? The economist in me looks at this and thinks there's got to be a more efficient way to share this information rather than starting from scratch each time or reaching out in small circles. How do we build that infrastructure so that we harness the research and the knowledge and the aspirations that are already there and bring that, I guess this is where economists can come in handy, to look at how to build a more efficient system around sharing that knowledge. From an innovation perspective, this is about transmission of that knowledge from one part of the ecosystem to the other, and how to do it with that open spirit so it's credible, it's accurate, and it's done out of generosity and a realisation that it's actually there's a public good and there's a social benefit to all of this as well. So that's effectively what the hub is about, and I've used this picture quite intentionally because it is about heart and soul and human. And it's, yes, we've got metrics and we've got analysis and we've got technical capability, but we're all driven by passion at the end of the day. And so if we can just remind ourselves of that human heart that connects us all, and the open book. So imagine it's the open book, the sharing of knowledge, and those 2 pages of the book coming together to create that bridge between these 2 worlds. So our aim is to build that bridge between the academic research and the change makers. So this is the point, that there are so many people out there with the capacity to act on this knowledge, to put it into practice, to pull the policy levers if they have access to it. And so this is about making it all the more accessible and understandable and within their reach. This is also not just a one-sided flow of information. So building that bridge and connecting that those different parts of the ecosystem is 2-way, and it's multiple ways. So it's about feeding back to researchers and academics. Here's what we actually need to know. We need to evaluate this, and building that 2-way exchange and flow of information so that the research itself can be more sharply tailored to practical applicability as well. So there are 5 underlying principles or values to the hub. The first one is that objectivity. So this isn't driven by a particular agenda. Not that, there are many parts of this ecosystem that are driven by objectivity, but it is about impartiality. And that also means being bold enough to say, you know what, that particular initiative isn't backed up by the evidence. And that's hard. That's actually hard for policymakers or companies to admit to. We've invested in something, we're going to put ourselves through an evaluation process and potentially be exposed to the fact that what we've been investing in isn't backed up by the evidence. And the point here is that that's not a failure. Failure would be not evaluating it. Success is being brave and courageous enough to evaluate it, to share those results, to learn, and to grow from that experience. And so bringing that innovation culture and mindset is so important in that policy making space. We have to legitimise that discovering what doesn't work is probably even more important than knowing what does work. And sometimes it's a case of what works in a particular setting, particularly when we look at intersectional dimensions and recognising that something that works in one setting might not work in another setting. So objectivity means basically courage to admit to when something doesn't work, that's okay, at least now we know, and we'll grow from that. Transparency, so this is about that openness, intersecting with the previous point that it is about admitting when something isn't working and embracing that as a lesson and an insight and a discovery. So being transparent about that. Collegiality, I would love for you to come away from this event this evening feeling that you're part of a community and it's one of sharing our knowledge, that you're not alone or isolated or siloed, but actually we're connecting and we're synergising with each other, and that practitioners and industry, people in industry are sharing with researchers what do you need from the research space as well. It's not in competition with each other, as Minister Lee mentioned. This is about leveraging the existing practices and initiatives that are out there rather than competing with them or duplicating them. And accessibility. So I know we produce great research, and I know I've got academic friends here. That amazing paper sits behind a paywall, or a whole lot of algebraic equations that no one can understand outside of your seminar friends. And so that's incredibly important for the rigour and reaching that point. But how do we enable academic research findings to spill out beyond those academic walls, the paywalls, the obtuse language, and translate it? So this is a matter of research translation. And empowerment through knowledge. And Winston Lee touched on this. This is about recognising that our universities are predominantly public funded. It's public funding. So it makes sense that the insights from that research flow back to the public, into the hands of the public, and are used to inform the decisions and policies that influence us all in our community. This wouldn't be possible without the support and the resourcing of funders behind this, the Trawalla Foundation and the Women's Leadership Institute Australia. And a big thank you to Sarah Buckley for being here today, and from the RMIT University Enabling Impact Platforms. And a thank you again to Professor Sui Mack and Professor Anne-Laure Manchion for supporting this. And I would say this is not merely about funding and resourcing. This is about endorsement and having belief and faith in this idea. And that's been an incredibly powerful driver to keep this idea rolling and seeing it to fruition. It says something about universities and funding bodies, that it's what you're actually investing in is belief and faith in the merits and the value of a proposal. So if there's another takeaway from today's session or today's event, it's that you feel part of this community. If you agree with the essential purpose and the values of the Hub, you belong in this community. This is not about signing up to a particular membership or being part of an exclusive team or you're part of the centre and you're not. If you believe in the merits of the value and the purpose of the Hub, please consider yourself part of this community. And follow along, and we'll have future events, we'll have that exchange of knowledge. This is not about walls, this is about openness. Okay, now I know you want to see what it looks like. Okay, the Hub, what it looks like. Now, what I'm going to share with you are the screenshots of what it looks like when you open up and land on the page. And after tonight's event, the pages will all go live and you'll be able to explore. As I've said to some of the other panelists, this is a bit like a housewarming. When you invite people over and you go, come and see, we've got an address, we've got a house, but some of the rooms still need a little bit of furniture and there's still some boxes that need unpacking, but I know that you'll be generous enough to understand that and you'll get the general idea. So just be ready. This is the framework, this is the shell, this is the home, and part of furnishing it and decorating it and unpacking those boxes is also hearing from all of you, what would you like to see on the Hub? And so it can be an iterative process of hearing your feedback and your ideas as well. And for researchers to come forward and say, you know what, I've just got this new paper that would be great on the Hub, because we're open to that as well. Okay, so when you land, the main components will be searching for actions, evidence-based actions, and searching for data. And the way to think about the actions is, if you have these great academic papers, which are often written in a way where you have the introduction and you have the methodology, and then you arrive at this conclusion at the end as to what to do, these actions inverse that process and say quite clearly, here's the action, and then you can read on to read a little bit more about where this information came from. So scrolling down, you'll see some other parts of the landing page. The frequent questions will be these common questions about gender equality, which I imagine will be quite useful for educators and students, like what's the gender pay gap? I get asked those questions from students quite often, and again, how do I economise on that response? So if you were to click on actions, what you'll see is the various stakeholders, the various agents. And so this is about identifying, are you arriving at the Hub as an organisation, as a government, as a leader, as an educator? And this is really important for illustrating that change requires multiple stakeholders, and it's a holistic systems level process of change that we're talking here. You'll notice there's not a box for women. Okay, so I know there's enough information out there what women could do. So actions for the various stakeholders and working together. If you were to click on organisations, you'll get this this breakdown of key actions, and you can click on each one, and then it will unpack what that action refers to. And I know for time, we're going to have to, you'll have to just get a sample, a teaser for now, and have a look at it. So imagine if you've clicked on parental leave. The action's pretty clear. It's backed up by the evidence. Provide use it or lose it paid parental leave for dad. So each action follows a template. The starting point would be what to do, written really clearly. You scroll down, what gender bias does this help to solve? So explaining the gender biases behind it in simple language, or in everyday language, Scrolling down further, mentioning some of the key studies where that research came from, again, in everyday language. And what else do you need to know about? So what are some of the caveats or conditions around this? What else do you need to accompany this research or this action with? Where do we don't know exactly where it's going to work? Okay, so you've got information there. Then you've got the links to the evidence, and just clicking on each of those images will take you straight to the original paper as well. Some of them are behind paywalls, but that doesn't matter because at least we've extracted the key information in this setting. Then there'll be links to the data that relate to that particular action. How to cite, and I imagine that the authorship will expand over time when more and more people join the hub, and then exploring a little bit more. When it comes to the gender pay gap, I'm going to share with you a resource that I've put together, that as well. Here's another action, and I'm delighted to share this one because this action comes from several researchers who I know who are joining us today as well. I think we've got Nispan and Lata and Erta in perhaps either here in person or tuning in online. So this is research that Australian economists are generating. You can see this one. So this is about opting in by default. So again, a bit of an explanation, what the gender bias helps to solve, where does this evidence come from? These are experiments that have discovered that if people, including women, are considered automatically and have to opt out rather than opt in to a promotion round, it increases women's involvement and outcomes. So the evidence, you'll see, I'm delighted to see that we've got, I think we've got the researchers here. So these are those papers, and this is a way of making the most of the fantastic research that you've conducted and packaging it up in a way that makes it usable and accessible, and will keep growing as those research findings continue to expand. If we quickly go to data is listed across sort of a life course theme, but also with some categories that you probably wouldn't expect to see in relation to gender equality, including climate and technology. So clicking on each of those will open up a selection of different data points. If we imagine we're clicking on the gender gap in pay, you'll get a breakdown and an explanation of what the gender pay gap is and Australian data in various different metrics. So you'll get the gender gap in weekly earnings, consistent with the ABS classifications and definitions, and also not just the numbers but text, words to spell it out and talk it through, and clicking on the link will take you directly to the ABS website. Breaking it down by industry, listed from biggest to smallest gender pay gap. Gender pay gap over time, so we can see that reduction, and the intersectional lens. So with each of the data, you'll see where there's intersectional data available, it will be provided alongside, and it'll be indicated by that symbol. And we don't have every dimension of intersectionality for every metric, but we can look at which ones really perhaps stand out and we really need to focus on, or which ones do we have data for. So that will be there alongside the data. With the gender pay gap, there's a little resource there that you'll find under Your Question Answered, and it's called "Is the Gender Pay Gap Just a Myth?" And this is about trying to reach a certain cohort of society who have skepticism and doubts about the gender pay gap, and try to almost step into their shoes and try to understand and empathise with why they might think that way, rather than just say there's no such, the gender pay gap does exist. So what we're actually using in the hub is we're drawing upon some of that research on resistance and backlash to inform the way that we communicate this information. So there's sort of another layer to the way that research is being used. And I know some school teachers have said to me they really struggle with this topic. And I'd love to hear their feedback on the potential usefulness of this. It's a short video, and it's imagining this is a conversation that people, in this case, perhaps say two young men, are having. And it's legitimising you can change your mind. You can learn some facts, expose yourself to some information, feel empowered by that, and you can change your mind. So that's drawing upon the research on the psychology behind this to the best that an economist can. Just quickly to round up, there are helpful links. So you'll see links to some key agencies, key institutions in Australia, like Office for Women, WGEA, the Commission, ABS, Australian Human Rights Commission, all those sort of key, your go-to page for those types of things. And it's not just all doom and gloom, like there's some really positive information there as well, particularly when it comes to recognising improvements and gains and momentum and inspiration from history as well. So to wrap up then, a big thank you to you all for just giving your time and interest towards this initiative and having faith in the idea. The website will go fully on live this week, and like I said, it will continue to be populated with more information, so you can stay tuned for it to keep updating and to be notified of when new information comes through and when data gets refreshed. And please feel that you're part of this. So we'd love to hear your feedback, what you need from the hub, how it can be improved. That's the whole spirit of it. Thank you.
Are we all excited by the fact that somebody has brought, like the amazing Leonora has brought it all together instead of spending ages like, yeah, just congratulations. I don't know about you, but I've spent hours trying to, track down information and go down little rabbit holes and access things that are behind paywalls to bring things together. So it's just, I think it's the breadth and the ambition of your vision is just very inspiring, and I hope we're all really excited